you always believe the evidence of your eyes, or do you sometimes need a little more context before you can truly accept the reality of what you think you're seeing? You might be asking yourself that question a lot while you watch this video. It's full of discoveries that seem too bizarre to be real or too inexplicable to be rationalized. If you love a good mystery, you're in the right place. We're starting off in Iran, where we're checking out the famous Rodkin Tower. This stunning astronomical tower was built by a man hailed as the greatest Persian scholar of the Islamic Golden Age. His name was Tusi, and he designed and built the tower during the middle of the 13th century. After he died and the years began to pass, people forgot what the tower was ever supposed to be used for in the first place. Archaeologists of the past have misinterpreted the 100-foot-tall structure as a tomb, a beacon, or just a curious landmark, but we now know it was nothing so commonplace. The 12 walls of the tower correspond to the 12 months of a year. On the days of the summer solstice and the winter equinox, the sun aligns perfectly with the doors on each side of the tower. Using this structure, it's possible to identify the beginning of each season of the year, predict a leap year, and determine the start of Nowruz, which is the Iranian New Year. Far from being yet another boring old tomb, the Rodkin Tower is one of the largest and most magnificent scientific instruments of its age. Lake Michigan in the United States of America is a good place to go looking for sunken ships. That's where a team from Northwestern Michigan University was doing precisely that in 2007. They found more than one ship, but the shipwrecks they discovered paled in comparison to the unexpected discovery they found lurking beneath the water. There, hidden almost 40 feet below the surface, was a strange stone structure. The surfaces of these standing stones are coated in barnacles and other sea life, but there's no mistaking the fact that they're artificial in nature. According to marine archaeologists Brian Abbott and Mark Hawley, the structures are approximately 9,000 years old. That's an incredible claim, and yet it might be too conservative. One of the stone features a carving shaped like a mastodon, and the mastodon died out a little over 10,000 years ago. Either the person who made the carving was working based on an accurate description of a mastodon that had been passed down from generation to generation, or they had a real mastodon to use for reference. That either means that the mastodon survived for longer than we think it did, or these standing stones are more than 10,000 years old. The site of Brunaboyne in Ireland is already well known to archaeologists and is considered a mystical site by pagans. There are all manner of ancient discoveries to be made there, but in 2018 we found out that the site is even more complex than we thought it was. There was a bad drought in the area that year, and during the drought, the grass caught fire and burned. When the fires were put out, it became evident that there was a pattern in the ground. The fire had accidentally revealed the presence of the foundations of an old stone circle buried beneath the ground. The circle is large in scale and is also perfectly round. If the stone circle was made at the same time as the megalithic tombs at Brunaboyne, it's likely to be around 5,000 years old. That makes it older than the Egyptian pyramids. We can only speculate about the reasons why the stone circle was built. Like Stonehenge in England, it's likely that it was a form of astronomical calendar, but we don't have enough evidence to prove it. The residents of a remote village in Siberia got the shock of their lives in 2012 when an enormous lump of space debris fell on their land. Fortunately, it landed in the middle of the road, and nobody was hurt. 10 years later, nobody's claimed ownership of the space debris, and it still isn't 100% clear what it is or where it came from. The metal object is roughly the size of a Volkswagen Beetle and weighs just under half a ton. One side of the object is capped by a dome. Local news agencies got excited about the discovery and suggested that it might be a piece of a UFO, although obviously that's unlikely. Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, examined the object shortly after it was found and declared that it isn't space technology. That being said, the Russians aren't exactly in the business of telling the truth about their space or military plans. Scientific testing has shown that the object is made of titanium but isn't radioactive. The lack of radiation is another suggestion that it's never been to space. So how could it possibly have fallen out of the sky? Ancient clay tablets inscribed with text written in dead languages are often difficult to interpret. This next artifact is very hard to interpret, but not because of the language it's written in. This is a Babylonian clay tablet, known as Plimpton 322. It's a little under 4,000 years old. The meaning of the markings on its surface remained a mystery for a long time after its discovery, but it's now thought that it's a trigonometric table. If they're right, it would be the oldest trigonometric table in the world. The Babylonians might have used it as more than a simple learning aid. Some historians think that this tablet, or tablets like it, might have been used to calculate angles when building temples, palaces, and stepped pyramids. The artifact was found by Edgar J. Banks in what's now Tel as-Sankara, Iraq, during the early years of the 20th century. Banks was the real-life inspiration for the creation of the movie character Indiana Jones. He passed away in 1945, and so he never knew the meaning of the numbers on his discovery. Most of them are Pythagorean triples, and have been found to describe the shapes of right-angled triangles using an unusual method based on ratios rather than angles or circles. The small village of Lepakshi in India isn't exactly a world-famous tourist destination, but perhaps it should be. There's a whole world of ancient wonders to be found here, and the technology that went into creating them has never been adequately explained. The enormous human footprint at the start of Sita's trail is a wonder all on its own. It's 3 feet long, far bigger than any human footprint has any right to be, and its origins are unknown. Stranger still is the hanging column. This ornately carved and decorated column doesn't touch the floor. Local tour guides often pass a newspaper beneath it to prove it isn't secured to the ground, and so it seems it really does float. During India's days of British colonialism, British engineers are said to have tried to move the column to find out what kept it in place, but they failed in their efforts. The laws of gravity simply don't seem to apply to it. Elsewhere, there are strange patterns of circles carved into stone, with smaller circles arranged around a larger one at the center. They're presumably intended to symbolize something, perhaps the sun, but nobody knows who made them, when, or how. One way of describing the Hal Saflieni hypogeum in Malta would be as an underground mass grave containing more than 7,000 bodies. That's a fairly grim description, so it might be more helpful to think of it as a beautiful work of art made by unknown builders using incredible skills. Incredibly, even though the 6,000-year-old structure sits barely 30 feet below the busy streets of Malta, it wasn't discovered until someone tried to build a water cistern in 1902. The whole sweeping, curving hypogeum is carved directly into limestone and splits into 3 layers. The final chamber has been designed in such a way that any sound made inside it echoes throughout the whole structure and can resonate within the human mind to affect emotions. This is known as infrasound technology, and its existence should have been way beyond the comprehension of people living 1,500 years before Stonehenge was built in England. Even more mysteriously, the skulls of many of the bodies buried there are elongated compared to modern standards, and testing has revealed that the elongation was a genetic trait. Who were these long-skulled people, and how did they understand so much about sound engineering? The Turin-Erotic Papyrus is a document unlike any other. This ancient Egyptian scroll painting has been described by some historians as the first men's magazine in world history. It's not really accurate to describe it as a magazine, though. Back when it was complete, it was more than 8 feet long and is split into only 2 frames, one which shows animals performing tasks usually reserved for humans, and another which shows people in a variety of sexual poses. It's been suggested that the animals doing human tasks are an attempt at humor, although you probably had to live in ancient Egypt to truly understand the joke. The sexual aspects of the scroll might also be a joke. All of the men in the images are depicted as overweight, bald, and short, whereas all of the women are young and beautiful. Egyptologists say that the Turin erotic papyrus was created during the Ramesside period of about 3,200 years ago, and is of such high quality that it was probably intended for a wealthy audience. If the two frames are supposed to create one cohesive message, we don't understand it. In the late 1990s, these technological advancements allowed us to discover a previously unknown ancient city close to Novosibirsk in the Siberian region of Russia. Because it was built on the banks of Lake Chicha, the previously lost city was named Chichaburg. As soon as the contours and borders of the settlement had been identified, archaeologists and scientists descended on the site to take a closer look. What they found was astonishing. Testing revealed that Chichaburg was built somewhere around 2,800 years ago, long before any large civilization was known to have existed in Siberia. Not only that, but it appears to have been an ancient utopia. Large-scale grand palaces were built directly adjacent to the homes of common people, as if there were no difference between the two. The remains of Europeans and Mongols have also been found at the site, seeming to suggest that they lived harmoniously side by side. Who were these people, and what happened to them and their city? Is Chichaburg an ancient utopia where the rich and poor lived side by side with people of many races? There were plenty of other civilizations within contact range of here 2,800 years ago, so why did nobody mention Chichaburg's existence? All we have are unanswered questions. Cleaning up Ground Zero in New York City, USA, after September 11, 2001, was a slow and difficult process for the Americans, both physically and emotionally. Nevertheless, it gave archaeologists an opportunity to explore the ground beneath New York in ways that had never been possible before. In 2010, to their immense surprise, they found an 18th century shipwreck hidden beneath the streets of Manhattan. Based on the evidence at the scene, it's likely that the 30-foot-long ship was sunk and buried at the site deliberately, as a form of landfill as builders attempted to create artificial land in the Hudson River. Parts of the vessel's timber frame were taken to laboratories for further research, where it was proven that the ship was built using wood felled in colonial-era Philadelphia. Despite extensive searches of records from the era, it has never been possible to specifically identify the lost ship. If it had been earmarked as landfill, it might already have been written off before it even arrived in the area. It's possible that there are other old ships in the area that met the same fate, but none have been discovered so far. The City Council of Gloucester, England, decided in 2013 that the city's men's prison was too old and unfit for purpose. They decommissioned it and replaced it with a new structure, leaving the old one to sit empty until it was demolished. Archaeologists were invited in a few years later to see if there was anything worth preserving beneath the prison. It's a good thing they were, because beneath what was once a basketball court, they discovered an entire medieval castle. The castle is estimated to have been constructed around 1100, shortly after the Norman conquest of England and during King Henry I's reign. It remained standing until 1787, when it was demolished. It was very definitely demolished to make space for the prison, but no historians of the time thought to note that a castle had formerly stood on the same plot of ground. Despite the fact that the upper portions of the castle were crushed during the demolition process, many of the ancient walls remain intact, and the lower chambers contain superb specimens of medieval pottery. Some archaeologists have likened the castle to London's iconic Tower of London, although that's really a stretch. The Galloway Hoard is the most valuable Viking treasure ever discovered in Britain. It was discovered in a field in Castle Douglas, Scotland, by an amateur metal detectorist in 2014 and is still being meticulously researched item by item. A carved rock crystal jar was painstakingly cleaned and re-examined in December 2021 at a facility operated by National Museums Scotland. That re-examination found it to be Anglo-Saxon rather than Viking in origin. It's a Roman-style crystal jar from the 8th or 9th century, with the name of an Anglo-Saxon bishop engraved on the base. "Bishop Hegold had me made," is what the inscription reads. This raises the possibility that Vikings raided a church in Northumbria and buried their loot with other Viking antiquities. It also implies that the hoard may contain other non-Viking artifacts. One of them, a silver pectoral cross with niello enamel work that is unlike anything else in the world, might be the collection's centerpiece. We've always believed the Vikings created it until now, but we're back to square one with no notion of what's Viking and what isn't. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon!